What's up, everybody? Welcome to Devs React to Speedruns, where you get to ride along with the developers as they react to the absolutely insane abilities of the speedrun community. Today, the creators of Nex Machina witness an incredible run of their game from speedrunner AShinyBlackPhoenix. Enjoy!
Hello, this is Housemarque, and my name is Mikael Haveri. I'm the marketing guy on Nex Machina.
Hey guys, my name is Harry Krueger. I was the game director for Nex Machina.
And yeah, we're doing the IGN developers look at speedruns. So this is Nex Machina. This is a fast-paced title.
Oh man, it's already on level 3.
Is it?
This guy seems to know what he's doing.
Yeah, he's clearly running around circles with these enemies. Tell me a little bit about the nuances. Now you got a power shot, and there's a lot of weapons you can pick up.
Yeah, well there's the 5 different weapons that you can pick up, and they just appear from like different crates and so on, and they cycle around, so the idea is to encourage players to experiment with different weapons, and
right.
Everybody has their favorite. I think the sword seems to be a bit less on the favorite listing. Maybe not that popular
sword
as a
is
weapon.
a bit more of a melee, close combat type of thing.
Yeah,
so
it's a bit more of a high-end kind of play style. That's a lot more risky. You have to jump in, get really close and intimate to the enemies.
well, it's risk can ruin your runs. Like for this guy, I don't think he'll be using sword.
Now
Clearly.
the charge shot is one of my favorites as well. So yeah, it has that big blast when you actually shoot around the player.
Right.
So it does a really nice like AoE kind of effect there, and of course it has the piercing shot that you can just impale a bunch of enemies like a souvlaki, you know?
It doesn't stop, and you are familiar with souvlakis, I suppose.
Of course, yeah.
That's a kebab for the American crowd, right? Souvlaki kebab. Anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
And I guess the guy is also, being a speedrun, I guess the guy's skipping all of the secrets.
Yeah, we made a bunch of secrets in there so you could get a better score. Right now, we're not trying for scores and multipliers and all that. This is more about
Absolutely.
time less spent, which is fun as well.
Yeah, so the humans are made entirely optional.
The green guys,
The green guys, yeah.
slow slugs.
So
Slug we call them slugs, right?
human slugs, yeah.
Yeah.
That was
They're,
the inspiration.
I think the inspiration was also from Wall-E, this Disney Pixar flick with, let's say, humans that got complacent.
Yeah, one
the
out of
future?
many. Dystopian future. Clearly, so we had this problem that all the humans, they're moving around, and they're kind of not really paying attention to what's happening.
They're with
And
their
we're like,
iPads.
how do we solve that?
They're
Yeah,
walking
we
around,
just gave them
glued
iPads.
to their screens, which is, pretty much the way the world is.
There's a bit of a gentle social commentary going on there as
Slight.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is pretty cool. You have the third-person camera a little bit here, and
Now we
this
get
guy
to
is
the
fast.
first boss. It is much faster than we usually play through.
But yeah, I guess so. The idea is that the level advances once you kill all the enemies, right?
Right.
So that's
That's
why
the
it's
condition.
actually So if you know where all the enemies are spawning, you know what patterns kind of you need to kill completely, so the next pattern can spawn. Once you memorize some of those, you can clearly optimize your strategy
For sure.
to get through these as fast as possible. I mean,
He's
clearly,
using the sword now.
yeah. Even here, the guy's clearly like ignoring the humans, which is
Doesn't add to
pretty much what you want.
the
Oh,
experience.
pretty cool. He used the sword here as well.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's the first.
a bit more of a high-end kind of play with the sword. So, higher risk, relatively higher reward in a way. You have to get close and personal, and it's really powerful. It can also slice through bullets as well. But
That's again.
you tend to combine that with the dash. So like
That's
triple dash with melee actually feels pretty damn cool to slice around with style.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that when you get to upgrading your character, you feel more powerful when you got things like triple dash, which is very crucial to how you maneuver the playfield. One thing that we have in common with a lot of our arcade titles is the Housemarque dash, which is just moving around while your character is invulnerable. But other than that, this is a very basic Let's have
Yeah.
the runner talk here a little bit. But yeah, the basic bullet hell formula is sort of true. We're keeping true to that.
Yeah, so there's the bullet hell elements, of course, and in traditional bullet hell style games, you don't actually have a dash. It's 100% about the avoidance gameplay.
Right.
But for us, we wanted to, of course, combine that with our more traditional kind of like hectic, fast-paced style. So the dash brings a bit of that energy, that kinetic kind of, that mobility to the gameplay.
Most of our games are a balance of bullet hell mixed with sort of environmental control.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily seen exactly like you said in the traditional bullet hell games.
Yeah, so it's not a traditional bullet hell experience, but it's a pretty interesting fusion for sure. And clearly the dash is actually required in a lot of cases to just dash through beams and other
he's been doing a lot of
damage
that.
shapes and stuff that are otherwise unavoidable,
Kind of like a dodge roll, if you will.
Yeah, so you have these layers of depth and challenge that we offer the player. So clearly shooting the enemies is one thing, collecting the humans is another. Then you have the bullet hell kind of elements that kind of have almost like a constant presence in the game.
Yeah.
And then you have the slightly more infrequent things like sweeping beams or shock waves, like those things in the fourth world we'll see later, that just give you that rhythm, So it's like avoid, 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 dash.
Right.
Clearly, when you're playing at this level, you're just, weaving through everything like pro.
And in the first levels, like right here, you see that the weapon choices are, of course, maxed out with having this huge impact, so you can clear as many.
That's fast.
Yeah, this is the thing.
This is awesome, yeah.
You're clearly seeing a guy who's plowing through enemies, and all the waves don't seem to really make him back up too much. He's not running away. But this is also early on in the game, so we'll probably see that change a little bit as you go forward. For anybody starting this game, so like we try to make these games, of course, easily accessible. You don't have too many buttons to work with. It's a simple design, so anybody can get into it, but you kind of have to keep on your toes.
Yeah.
And then again, like the player here, you need to learn a lot of these things and be aware.
No, dude, yeah. So I think it's pretty in line with the classic arcade design philosophy, right?
I gotta say here, by the way, this is one of my favorite bosses. The music from Ari Pulkkinen.
It's awesome, yeah.
This guy, of course, slightly influenced by, should I say, Donkey Kong?
I don't know what gave you that impression.
Yeah, that's my take on it, at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. You were
It's
talking
in the
about
name.
the
But
simplistic.
Yeah, there's the...
See how fast
holy
that was?
shit.
That's
That's
insane.
impressive. And that was
Like
with
he
the
just
beam.
battered the guy.
Yeah, so one of the high-tier kind of techniques that a lot of the world-class players utilize is heavy reliance on the dash explosion.
Right.
So, as a kind of intermediate player, maybe you just see it mostly as like a small breather. It's like, okay, well, I can get this window of invulnerability, maybe kill a couple of enemies along
So
the
you
way.
mean when you dash into an enemy that has the little
Yeah,
area,
see like
area
what the guy
effect.
just did there. Like there's a quick dash in and out,
Those
and
blue,
you let the dash explosion
the
at the
kind
end
of
of the
blue
dash.
orb around you there, yeah.
And that actually deals like a lot of damage.
Right.
And if you utilize that for the boss fights, even on the final one that we'll see later, you can actually take them down a lot faster.
That's right, because you're basically kind of jamming right next to the guy with the tons of damage.
Yeah, it works beautifully with triple dash because you do a quick dash in, dash out, and you just leave that dash explosion there that deals damage. So
do you think that's sort of a...
like there, you see that was a dash explosion with...
Do you think that's bad design on our behalf? Having such a powerful option with the dash? Not utilizing your main weapons from ranged, but going...
seeing how this guy plays, at least, I mean, clearly it's an extra layer of depth, right? It's
Right.
not distracting enough for newcomers. It's not like, hey, you have to play the game like this. It
Yeah, because
doesn't add
that would
complexity.
be hardcore if you...
It doesn't add complexity, it adds depth. And it's almost like a pretty cool discovery for those high-tier players to find. Like, holy shit,
That's right.
I can dash in and out and do this. And I think it's pretty satisfying in terms of like as a personal growth kind of thing to just see that, okay, I learned this new trick that the game was hiding,
And I think, a lot of players, you go to these things and it's good to find that depth. But yeah, that's a level of commitment that not too many people really get into.
Yeah. But like what we were saying before about the the arcade design philosophy, and a lot of it is easy to pick up, hard to master, right? That's the mantra.
By the way, I gotta say, I love these wavy lines here.
Yeah.
You do a lot of, let's say, slightly differentiated environmental blocks and kind of obstacles.
Yeah. So that's maybe that's kind of the defining characteristic of this level. So we tried that every single of the 6 levels that we have has its own flavor of bullet hell or projectile gameplay.
Right.
So this one in particular introduces the wavy beams.
Yeah.
That you haven't encountered before this. Well, okay, maybe the first boss has
Slightly,
them,
slightly, yeah.
But clearly this is just the main element that even gives all of the levels their own unique visual identity as well.
This is actually one of the funner parts because you won't see it, but there's a rock following you, Indiana Jones style.
Yep.
We never got to see. We never got to see the boulder because it got stuck. The speed of it was way too slow for keeping up with this player. But yeah, I really like the introduction of these more dynamic elements because once you get used to something, then all of a sudden it changes slightly.
Yeah.
So you have to take it into consideration again.
Yeah, I think once you have like all of the features in when you're developing the game, it's pretty tempting at times to just throw everything at the player at once,
Right.
But I think we adopted this rule that we didn't want to really introduce more than one new thing to the player at a time, whether it's like humans in the first levels or like new enemy types, new bullet patterns, So we kind of drip feed the content and show some kind of constraint in how we layer that.
It's easy to sort of compartmentalize, saying, "Oh,
exactly.
In level 3 you'll get X, Y, and Z."
Yeah.
And this enemy, by the way, this boss here, you got the first wave of pre-boss, and then the boss appears here. But this environment's always been tough for me because it is sort of confined, and then it's got a lot going on. It's sort of not a... This is where, to me, the game gets difficult.
Oh. What?
See? There you
Death
go.
as well.
Dude, that's not how your attack is supposed to
Yeah.
work.
What?
Second death?
Not
Oh,
again.
man.
It happens, but this is what's... the game is also designed to be difficult. And
Of course, I'm also
that can change the rhythm
Yeah.
quite a bit if you...
Yeah, well, to be fair, as you were saying, this is a pretty confined space, and some of these waves of flames that you find
Yeah.
on the ground, those are pretty hard to avoid when you're playing this aggressively,
That's what I
'Cause
mean.
You're
is-
diving in, you're trying to maximize the dash explosion damage, you start
Yeah,
playing with
yeah.
fire, quite literally in this case.
The
you
risk
get burned
clearly
sometimes.
goes... takes a bump here.
Again,
Yep.
Heltron.
Yeah, so here clearly the damage shapes, that's the name we used for these rings that expand.
Yeah.
That's kind of the main projectile-based feature
So
that we had
the
for this particular level.
Thinner
right?
lasers, if you will.
Yeah. So they're like rings that expand, and this is what I was saying before, that it creates this layer of pressure and some kind of rhythm to the levels as well. That like here, it just forces you to do a dash there.
That's essentially what it is. There's no other way of going through. You have to dash through it. So by now, if you haven't mastered the dash, this level is going to make you learn dash.
Ah, well, yeah. I mean, we kind of forced the player to use the dash very early on.
I know,
think it
but
was in the
like,
third level, but yeah.
I mean in a way that's much more used regularly. Because in the previous stuff, it's more like if you want to go forward, you need to use dash. Here it's like if you want to survive this particular area, you need to use it multiple times. So it's becoming more of a movement system rather than avoiding the specific obstacle in your way.
Yeah,
kind of
it
thing.
becomes an essential part of progressing. Like,
Exactly.
up until this point, you could maybe get away with many of the levels without using dash, in theory.
Yeah. I mean,
But
that's
here,
how
here
I
it
played.
becomes essential. Like you cannot progress at this point if you don't use the dash. And
Yeah, and I remember very clearly that was a big learning point for me because until this level, you kind of took things for granted. And you're like, it's not that bad. But then here it was kind of reality check with these circular waves.
But it was really important for us to try to make the controls as simple as possible. Not simple; they need to be visible.
How many buttons inputs are there in the game?
So
overall?
there's 2 sticks and 2 buttons. So twin stick controls move and shoot. That's pretty clear.
Okay, that was
Then you have 1 button for the dash and 1 button for your special attack.
Right.
Meaning in this case the
So
charge shot.
simplistically, let's say that if there was an arcade cabinet of this game ever made, we could do dual sticks with flight sticks, kind of like one button per stick.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. That to me, that sounds like optimal design.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of, like, Game Boy had, 2 buttons,
Sure.
if you will.
Well, the thing is, the simpler you make the controls, the more they melt away in your hands. They become invisible. You spend 0% of your attention on making those choices on the controller, and you spend 100% of your attention on all the crazy shit that we're throwing at you. That's why we can afford to have this degree of chaos in the game, because the controls are just pick up and play
Right.
and very, very simple.
Exactly. You're not looking at your controller or thinking about what's the combo
Yeah.
you gotta pull off.
Because it's pretty easy to get into this kind of paralysis by analysis thing on a micro level. You have like so many options. You have secondary attacks, grenades, some charge up attack, whatever, and it's kind of like
I love this part where he's running up the skyscraper, by the way.
yeah. So it's like in every one of those micro decisions that you have to make, you almost find yourself at this mental crossroad, and it's like, what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
Now we
yeah,
want to remove that so you can focus 100% on all this crazy stuff we're throwing at you.
for sure.
And that's the beauty of, like, even if you distill that further to like bullet hell games, they have an even simpler move set, and it's just about avoiding for the most part. And
Yeah,
even your bullets are just like usually fairly in the background, and you just focus on the enemy bullets and avoiding them.
It's sort of a corridor run where you're just trying to avoid things and just get through and survive.
Mess up
Yeah.
order.
And
It's
then
one of
there's
my
the.
favorite bosses, by the way.
I do like this boss. Again, it is not the easiest. Nor should it be, but I think in terms of the visuals and all these things that come together here, this boss is one of the more impressive bosses.
Yeah.
It's got that. I don't know why I keep thinking ninja. Was it called ninja something? No.
Well, it's
he's
Enforcer
got the
Prime.
samurai. He's got the
The ninja stars. right?
kunais. Yeah, the throwing stars.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I love the imposing kind of soundtrack that Ari made for this.
This is one of the, again, more recognizable songs. Too bad you couldn't hear all of the song here,
That
because
was fast, man.
this guy just went through that.
Yeah. There were a couple of moments there that he could have snuck in a few more.
I didn't even see the
rocket launcher.
kunai lasers at all.
Yeah, well, blink and you'll miss it, man.
Yeah. Or shurikens, that's the right word, right?
Shurikens, yes.
Yeah.
So this is the labs.
This is the second to last level.
That's correct, yeah. So
So-
if you play on easy, this actually is the last level, and
Right.
you get like an ending after this.
That's right.
But on normal difficulty or experienced and above, you get all 6 levels.
Yeah. So this is a part of it as well. The way we wanted to structure the game is that there's always things to find, and with easy, clearly, you kind of tease into this, try to play a little bit more and find out.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, it's good to have different difficulty levels, because even easy may be, it's a challenge for some people, and it's a good way to really get to know what the game is all about, because
Need to rewatch that.
sadly, arcade titles like this, of course, are not the mainstream anymore. So there might be some players that need a little bit of learning curve to get into it.
Yeah, I think, well, it is. We don't want to have that fully hardcore exclusivity, It needs to be accessible but deep. Difficulty levels, clearly they've been catered for different kind of skill levels and play styles. The veteran difficulty that we're looking at here, this one was actually my kind of like the difficulty that I balanced kind of like a lot of the decisions around.
It's sort of the
So
main.
this is kind of like this is my difficulty, The ones before this are a little bit too easy for me, and Master is like clearly going into a much more hardcore
Right.
domain as well.
and
But
Master
this has that sweet spot of difficulty for me at least.
Master is also something that isn't really speed run friendly. And then, of course, after Master comes the secret, if we may say.
The coveted hero mode, yes.
Yeah, which is only if you beat the game with Master do you get that.
Yeah, and you have to beat it with 1 CC actually.
What does that mean?
So 1 credit clear.
So you can't die.
So you cannot continue. You can die, but once you use a credit to continue, your possibility of reaching the ultimate final boss and
That's
also
it.
the hero mode is gone.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's like
So
a
we
handful of
wanted this-
people, I think, who beat the hero.
Yeah. So again, it was this extra layer. It's not really a surprise anymore for people who have played, for example, Resogun or previous games, but we wanted to have that extra kind of mode for those super hardcore players to enjoy after they finish the master difficulty without continuing.
That's right. One thing I really wanted to touch upon quickly is that we don't necessarily use any regular 3D assets here. The whole world is comprised of voxels, these cube shapes, and you can see that especially as a grid around the player. Well, the player and the enemies actually are 3D meshes, regular 3D.
The enemies and the player, yes, but all of the environments, a little known fact is that it's entirely ray traced.
That's right, that's right.
So we are using signed distance fields, and of course we use the voxel grid to represent kind of different assets, and that's how you get the pretty accurate destruction in some cases. But strangely enough, it was a choice we made for optimization, because we ended up having such a sheer amount of voxels that the traditional kind of vertex-based approach was just too much. But
Which
maybe
is
that's
fun
going
because
into too much
it
tech
does
detail.
it does give you a little bit of a distinct visual style. Goes along with the arcade.
Yeah, and you can have these really cool things like, you know, that shockwave that you have, like the kind of gentle shockwave that you see on the floor sometimes when you have like an explosion.
You can
That's
see the grid coming up.
So it allows for those kind of effects
For sure,
to happen
for sure.
much more seamlessly.
One other thing that I wanted to bring up, since this is an arcade classic, inspired at least, if you will.
Yeah, see, that's look, dash explosion.
Yeah, using
really
a lot of
hammering
that
it.
to
Yeah,
get the.
that's awesome.
See, they get those
That's
waves
fast,
go
man, look.
past really fast. I was
And
going to
you
say,
got this is where we introduced the dark beams, by the way.
which you cannot dash.
You
through.
cannot dash through, so that's like once you feel like you've mastered the dash, as you were saying before, we like shift up the rules a little bit.
Can't use it anymore.
Yep.
I was going to say that Eugene Jarvis was working with us, inspiring some of the design for this. He's the guy who made a lot of the 80s classics.
Yeah, so
Smash
clearly
TV, Robotron,
Robotron was clearly the biggest inspiration for this game.
and our actually previous project name for this was Resotron.
Resotron, yes.
So
indeed.
Resogun combined with Robotron there. But yeah, it is a little bit of homage to the early twin sticks, especially the sort of single-player man versus machine. Hence the name as
It's the
well.
robot apocalypse and
Death-
the lone,
Death
the
Machine.
lone hero.
Nex Machina,
Death Machine, indeed.
the machine of death.
Yeah.
And,
this-
and that's the sort of arcade thing as well. You're fighting against the machine, trying to beat the machine and get higher and higher on the
Yeah.
leaderboards. But yeah, you were going to say.
So that was one of the big things that we just wanted to embrace, that kind of spirit of Robotron. That's basically shoot and survive, but just adding like a little bit of extra depth there without detracting from the original's kind of elegance.
To
in
make
its
it a bit
design.
more modern in a way, on all fronts, visuals, music included.
So, I mean, we experimented with a lot of different things while we were making this game, you know, and at a point, you know, we had even a slightly more slower paced kind of experience that you had to walk to the exit, and we were entertaining like keys and backtracking, and, you know, it started really ballooning in scope. But very quickly we reverted back to just this pure distilled kind of experience, and just
Fast-paced,
yeah,
sort of
and
aggressive,
the
pushing.
simpler you keep things, the easier it is over time to polish it to perfection as well, you know, because you have fewer complex moving parts in the equation.
Well, as we're getting towards the end of the game here,
Oh man, that was fast. I feel
know,
like we're just
I know.
getting started.
I wanted to say a couple things. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more about this game and us and the team behind it, we did make a movie called the name of the game documentary. It's available online on a lot of different places. Just looking at us and the struggles, because I mean this was fun. This game was really fun to make, but again, as you get really personal and you're trying to create something to stand the test of time, you know, it does take a lot out of you, and we're all people just working like any other people. So, you know, it's a very emotional journey of us making this title. So that's out there. And you can, of course, play the game. That's another thing that we didn't get. Not too many people played. A lot of people did play it, but we hope that there would be a wider audience. And that's just one of the realities that The more niche you go with your designs and your ideas.
Yeah, and the thing is that, I mean, it is a fairly small game in terms of scope, but clearly a lot of love went into it, and it did have a disproportionately large budget, you could say, for the type of game that it is. So in a way, it was kind of like the realization that making, small games with a big budget is not a very viable kind of avenue to continue on.
That's a good thing to leave off in a way, and kind of looking at the future of things to come.
But in many ways, all of the lessons that we've learned, the creative spirit that has been arguably distilled over many years into an experience like Nex Machina, that's not going anywhere. It will continue to live on.
Absolutely.
Just in a slightly different package.
And similarly to our past.
I love the music here as well, man.
Was this your music?
No. The next song was mine.
The next song is yours.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I like that does ramp up the tempo a bit slower.
It's awesome, yeah.
And here we get
did
into
an amazing job with the soundtrack in general.
Absolutely.
And there's some really, even so, there are some high points.
Nex Machina soundtrack available on Spotify and other places.
And vinyl as well.
Vinyl, very limited release though.
Yep.
I'm not sure if that's available anymore. I love the patterns, and you get into this sort of majestic space opera. If it wasn't intimidating,
Here it is.
Oh,
This is awesome.
Holy shit, this is another goal.
holy shit!
Nice work, man.
It's an unbelievable job for somebody to run it this fast. Again, but this is a game that's also semi-designed
Sub 26 is no longer
for this, you know what I mean?
possible, my ass. Okay.
Yeah, so actually, for this boss battle, so I wrote the track for it, and actually all of the attacks are synchronized to the music.
That's right.
So let's see how long we get a chance to enjoy it.
Oh, he died again.
But you'll see that, for example, I am darkness, I am eternal, I am Nex Machina. The droids that appear, all of those have been coded to appear in sync with the music.
Yeah.
And there's this climactic moment that we probably won't get to see at this pace.
You'll have to play the game for yourself to be able to see those nuances that
where
Harry's
there's
talking
this, where there's this downtime in the music, and there's the triangles coming in, and it's just building up to this kind of crescendo, and then you have the heroic climax there, where it feels like the player is.
See, he's dying.
No.
That's the first.
Oh man,
Is that where he's counting it?
that was
Dude,
awesome.
what the fuck just happened in those last two worlds?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. What
That was
happened?
an awesome run. Oh, and here's the somewhat happy ending as well.
Oh, so they don't count the last boss as part of the run.
Right.
Of
Okay.
course. Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, because you get the end visuals anyway, right? That makes sense.
Yeah, fair enough.
See, clearly we haven't done too many speedruns, so we have different things to think about. Thanks everybody for joining us. This has been Harry and
was really
Mikael from
awesome.
Housemarque.
Yeah, awesome to
We
revisit
got
this.
into a lot of cool topics there, but hopefully we get to do some more of these, and thanks for sticking around. All right.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Bye.